Hi, I'm Steve Morgan, founder of Cybersecurity Ventures and editor-in-chief at Cybercrime magazine. I'm here today with Simon Hodgkinson, former CISO of BP and a member of the advisory board at RangeForce, developers of the world's most comprehensive cybersecurity training and cyber skills assessment program. Also joining us is Rupert Collier from the RangeForce UK and EMEA organization. To learn more about RangeForce, visit rangeforce.com. Welcome, Simon and Rupert. It's great to have both of you with us today.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks. It's a pleasure to be here.
Simon, you were previously the CISO at BP, and before that you held technology and security leadership roles at the company. Great to have guests with your stature. The intersection of CISOs and cyber ranges is new for some, not for all. Definitely for many, because we talk to a lot of CISOs. Maybe you can, talk to us a little bit about, cyber ranges today, CISOs, what type of awareness they do or don't have around them, and where you see the importance of them.
So as you rightly said at the introduction, I've been in IT for about 35 years now, and my last 4 years was CISO at BP. And just a bit of context, while cyber attacks have been around for 30 plus years, clearly the prevalence has increased enormously recently, and therefore the profile of CISOs in the security team has increased significantly, with cybersecurity now being a board level risk in most organizations. The CISO is no longer buried in IT infrastructure. For many, many years, it was very buried in the organizations. And in many forward-leaning organizations, it's now a peer to the CIOs, CTOs, and CDOs of the world, and the business leadership, of course. And one of the key risk activities for the CISO is about ensuring you've got the right capability. In a world where, there's numerous reports, there's of sort of cyber talent exceeding demands, up to 3 million open unfilled vacancies globally. It's really important that we are accessing new capability all of the time. And frankly, the job of the CISO really now is about ensuring we get access to capability. But the ways we've done that in the past are no longer scalable, and therefore things like cyber ranges become a really, really important aspect, a really important tool in the arsenal, if you like, of being able to develop capability to make sure that organizations have access to the right capability with the right technical expertise at the right time.
Rupert, to help set the stage for our discussion, exactly what is a cyber range? A lot of us in the cyber community know what it is, but we also have a lot of IT leaders who may not be familiar.
I think the easiest way to describe a cyber range, Steve, is really to we're recording the day after the Masters golf tournament finished. And in golf, they call it obviously a driving range, and in cyber, we call it a cyber range. But actually, the principle is very much the same. It's a kind of an off-course or an off-network environment in which you can run simulation group activities, either offensive, in other words, red team type events, or defensive, incorporating the cyber defenders within your organization. And it's a good opportunity to test your best practices, to test your workflows and your incident response playbooks and that kind of thing. In a completely separated, siloed environment where you're not going to be able to do any damage if you make a mistake. A lot of companies do live kind of fire on live networks, and that has its place as well, of course. But I think a cyber range is unique in offering a very lifelike, realistic, genuine environment, but a completely simulated one, which allows people just to relax a little bit and try out new things that perhaps they wouldn't in the real world. So that's the concept, very broadly speaking, of a cyber range.
So Simon, we had Gordon Lawson on with us, the president of the company. I guess he was with us about a month ago, and he did a great job, helping us understand the cyber threats, how cyber ranges can help. But given your background, I'd really be interested to understand how it can help specifically with OT and ICS environments.
Yeah, Steve. So it's probably worth us just defining those terminologies a little bit as well. I mean, they're widely used interchangeably. You've also heard of terms like SCADA as well. But the way I hold it is sort of operational technology. So OT really refers to the computers that are used to manage industrial operations. And the industrial control systems are part of OT. They're comprised of systems that are there to, say, monitor and control a particular industrial control process. So, say in oil and gas, something like the oil refinery cracking towers, etc., or closer to many people, the electricity grids that are powering the infrastructure in our respective countries. So on that basis, the ICS environments and the OT environments are mission critical by definition. That means they require high availability and integrity. And the attack on an ICS system could lead to devastating consequences, such as fatalities or environmental disasters. You can imagine an environment where somebody's able to hack into a human management interface and change the configuration of a valve, etc., so that things overflow and cause a pressure event. That can lead to complete disaster. And we've seen very much so in the environment. We've seen attacks on ICS systems. So we were very high-profile attacks on the Ukrainian power grid, and there were power outages there. We've also recently seen attacks on water treatment plants in a number of countries in the world. And probably the most high-profile attack of this nature was Stuxnet on the Iranian nuclear facility. That was probably 7 odd years ago, if not more now. But actually reported over the weekend, whether it's right or not, there was another attack on the Iranian nuclear facility, and we'll see if that was cyber related as well, as the situation gets clearer. So security of OT and IT is a really specialist area. And frankly, it's been an area where the engineering community and the cybersecurity community have never really come together to work as one. And that's what we actually need. We need expertise from people who understand engineering and the industrial processes, as well, people who really understand cybersecurity teams. Cybersecurity skills, and bring that blend of skill sets together in order to create a capability to manage the ICS environment. And that requires us to be able to provide the latest training and awareness capability to that engineering community and cross-pollinate that knowledge. And therefore, cyber ranges, again, can be a really, really powerful aspect of people's capability development. So the ability, as Rupert rightly said, the ability to actually test your skill set in a controlled environment. You simply, it's really difficult to test your skill sets in an ICS environment. You need a controlled environment in which to test those. Is a really important aspect of us developing that capability to secure ICS environments in future.
So, Rupert, to the notion of testing, talk to us about continual self-paced training. A big part of the cyber range philosophy is the ongoing training. I guess much like developing martial arts skills, it's not going to happen unless you're doing it over and over again.
Yeah, absolutely. Simon can tell you a bit more about martial arts than I can, but certainly to go back to my golfing analogy, somebody like Matsuyama or Justin Rose or whoever it may be, they didn't get good at what they do, and it applies to every discipline, without hours and hours of training, without hours and hours of practice. And also equally, they don't remain good at what they're doing without continuing. And if you take, again, going back to golf, sorry, it's a bit of a favorite topic of mine, but if you go back a few years, Vijay Singh, when he was number one in the world, he was renowned for having the most incredible kind of attention to detail with his practice. He would stand on the driving range for hours on end, going through drills, and still does to this day, I believe. So you don't get good without practice, and you don't stay good without practice. And cybersecurity, is just the same in terms of other kind of disciplines. You have to continue doing what you do and reassessing and reevaluating how you do it on a continual basis. And the only really safe and secure way to do that is in a cyber range environment. And I think the really I think interesting thing from a RangeForce perspective is our ability to offer organizations this concept of a combination learning program. So training in your own time in a completely non-pressurized environment, and then coupling that with a much more pressurized environment where you're acting as part of a team, and you're suddenly under time pressure. You're in the face of an attack which is going on in real time, and you and your colleagues are under the pump to detect and mitigate that attack in real time. So the concept of combination learning is really, really important. Preparing yourself for a day like that, using self-paced learning, going through the event on the day so that you're contributing and benefiting from the day. And then if there are any skills gaps that are identified, equally as important then is going back to your self-paced learning to address those skills gaps. So that concept of combination learning is absolutely vital in cybersecurity and in other disciplines.
So Simon, I'm curious where cyber ranges fit strategically for large enterprise CISOs, because they are up against so many challenges, and they're thinking about things along the lines of insider threats, training employees on cybersecurity awareness, and the list goes on. I don't have to tell you. Endpoint security, where exactly, does the cyber range fit? How strategic is it? And is it something that CISOs are talking to each other about?
Yeah, thanks. First and foremost, I figured out why I'm not much use at golf now. I'm going to need to spend more time on the driving range, I think. So I'll come back to the most important job at a CISO is to develop capability. You're right, the threat, the regulatory, the digitization agendas are moving at unprecedented pace. At the same time, we've got this massively fierce battle for the best talent. So it's critical our teams are continuously honing their skills. To Rupert's point, they need to be practicing in a safe environment to make sure that they're ready for the day they need those skills at hand. But I'd also say this isn't, I think about the range in the broader sense, and Rupert's talked about the sort of self-paced training piece as well. I think, everybody in an organization is accountable for cybersecurity in the same way everybody in an organization is accountable for safety. So we need to find a way of upskilling everybody's capability. So through things like, as you rightly say, Steve, through things like cyber awareness, but increasingly with the digital organizations, as people adopt new methodologies like Agile and DevOps and start to insource capability, we need to make sure that secure development practices are there. So we need that self-paced training throughout the organization, not just the cyber teams. And therefore, the platforms like RangeForce offer that capability to help educate people on that different sets of skills across the cyber spectrum, if you like. The other thing is the threats are just evolving all of the time. So this notion of being able to sort of practice and hone your skills on a range is really important. So CISOs are definitely talking about cyber ranges. We've certainly historically we've put in place a lot of bespoke development, to do our own testing and training of our own defense teams. And it feels like that's now at the point where companies like RangeForce can step in and be that provider of these services to CISOs, so they don't have to develop that themselves. And this can be a sort of pure cloud-based solution that can benefit many companies, and CISOs can concentrate then on making sure they've got the right talent.
So, Rupert, tell us a little bit about RangeForce. There's a lot of buzz now here in the U.S. and presumably where you are in the U.K. and EMEA. What exactly does RangeForce bring to market? Tell us about some of the customers that you've worked with globally.
Well, I think to go back to the beginning, RangeForce was founded as a kind of a follow-on project from the creation of the NATO Cyber Range. And the NATO Cyber Range was positioned very deliberately in Tallinn, in Estonia. And if you remember back in 2007, Estonia suffered a very serious nation-state attack. They had a huge, several weeks, in fact, of mission-critical infrastructure having been brought down. So, I suppose to add a little bit of silver lining to the cloud, what better place to position a cyber range? And so that was a project back in the sort of late noughties. And as part of that, our founders then wanted to replicate the benefits of a cyber range, this whole concept of being able to run, simulation exercises in a controlled environment, but actually have it delivered through the browser rather than having what is typically a cyber range typically is a physical location. It could be a building or a room within a building at the very least. So by definition, you have a kind of a limitation in terms of how many people you can scale that out to. And I think certain areas of cybersecurity, and particularly ICS and OT, probably still need that to a certain extent. But I think with a lot of the attack vectors now, you can actually run these things through a browser, and that helps enormously, particularly in these COVID-affected times. And also with large-scale organizations, a lot of SOCs are distributed now across the globe. So having that concept of being able to deliver the same sort of exercises, but through the browser rather than on-premise, is I think, a really compelling message for a lot of CISOs and a lot of SOC team leads all around the world. We've partnered just over the last sort of year and a half with some very large organizations, both in the US and here in my region. We've partnered, for example, with the European Union in a variety of different areas, with some military customers as well. Finance, of course, is a very, very strong mainstay for the entire cybersecurity industry. They take that topic extremely seriously. And I just think the whole concept of being able to democratize the idea of cybersecurity training is it's a very compelling message. And I think the ease of delivery, coupled with the hands-on nature of what RangeForce provides, is a really simple way to upskill your teams and improve the overall cyber readiness, if you like, of the organization.
So, Simon, I read a press release. I know that you recently joined the RangeForce advisory board. I'm curious, how did you learn of the company? I don't know if you worked with them when you were with BP, and what attracted you to them, and what are you doing for them as a member of the advisory board?
Yeah, so I was watching RangeForce actually when I was at BP. We weren't a customer of RangeForce at the time. So the things that really interested me about RangeForce was this whole notion that there's a demand and supply issue in cyber talent, and the fact we absolutely need to be almost not just for our own companies, but for the benefit of everybody, looking at a way of developing new talent and fast tracking that new talent through to becoming useful in our respective defenses. So I thought the RangeForce platform looked really interesting in terms of the self-paced learning, also the community edition. Was also then the thing which I think really differentiates it is this battle fortress that Rupert talked to earlier, about this notion of having a cloud-based range, purely cloud-based range, but actually the ability to mimic your technology in your estate as well, so that it can let your teams develop in a really safe environment. So that was really a really important aspect for me. The fact that it was all cloud-based, I thought was great. So a lot of organisations have been adopting the cloud, and at BP, we were very much a cloud-first organisation. So the last thing you want to be doing is developing further things on premise, or potentially working with partners to have to set up on premise or very bespoke specific infrastructure in the cloud to develop your aim range. And I thought that was a differentiator as well. So the thing that honestly I felt really proud to be part of RangeForce, however, is the commitment to develop in minority groups. I see Gordon being very sort of prominent in supporting minority groups in getting hands-on learning. And I'll come back to the point, we all have a broader role in life. It's not just about our own organizations, but it's also about developing capability across those communities out there who perhaps naturally wouldn't get access to this sort of training, this fabulous training capability. So there was something about the culture of the company, the culture of RangeForce and Gordon in particular, that really attracted me to be part of it.
Great. Well, the minority community is something that we cover, and we'd love to explore that a little bit more with you. We only have so much time today. Rupert, tell us a little bit about the state of market adoption in the cyber range space. It's interesting, cyber ranges have been around for so long, yet they really haven't been productized and brought to market the way we've seen in the past few years. Do most mid-sized to large enterprises have some sort of cyber range in place now? And, where do you see the market going from here?
Yeah, I think at the very top end of the market, I would suggest that a lot of organizations do invest in cyber range technologies. Moving down the stack a little, probably less so, to be honest. And there are several, I think, main reasons for that. Firstly, it's quite expensive. It's pretty expensive to set up your own cyber range. Secondly, it's quite complicated. We have a whole team of people doing it, and to really, as a CISO, to justify whether it be 5, 10 people working over the course of a few months to set up, create, and maintain a cyber range. That's a significant investment, not just financial, but also in terms of people's time. And let's face it, most people within an organization really do have a day job to complete. And to take them away from that and put them on a project that really involves a huge amount of technical expertise, a huge amount of experience, that's a big ask for a lot of companies. They just don't have the time, the resources, the wherewithal. I think they would prefer, if they could, to pay for it as a service on demand that they can spin up at a time of their choosing, and not have to worry about any of the back-end infrastructure, not have to worry about any of the sort of maintenance. And I think that's where our founders and Gordon and others have seen a real gap in the market, bringing, as I said before, the concept of democratization to the market. On-premise cyber ranges, of course, they have their place, and I think military customers particularly are very concerned about having non-internet facing infrastructure. We totally understand that. But for certain subsets of the economy, I think the idea of a cloud-based cyber range, whether it be an individual cyber range or a group cyber range, I think is just an incredibly compelling proposition. And I imagine Simon can tell you more about his experience. But I think for a CISO to be able to say, just give me my infrastructure as best you can replicate it, include my technology stack. Make sure you've got my SIM in there, you've got my firewalls, you've got my EDRs, and then just run a few events with my guys. Let's see how they respond to a ransomware attack. Let's see what the incident response workflows that we have within our organization. Let's see how they fare under pressure of a website defacement or a data exfiltration attack or something along those lines. A disgruntled employee, or to be able to run these exercises on demand at will, pretty much, within a few hours' notice, is an incredibly compelling proposition, I believe, for all CISOs and SOC team leads. And I think that's where the market is going now. Even established figures in the marketplace, companies like Cyberbit, for example, or Atos, or IBM, or whoever it may be. There's a long list of Airbus is another one. They have incredibly advanced cyber ranges, but the one thing they lack is that scalability and that ease of access. And that's where RangeForce, I think, has a very attractive technology stack.
So, Simon, we have a core audience of Fortune 500 and Global 2000 CISOs who watch our media. So if you could speak directly to them, I think you're probably paying more attention to cyber ranges now than anybody, and you're in a unique role. What would you say to them? Any words of advice if they're thinking about their cyber range strategy in 2021 and next year?
Yeah, so I think Rupert. Back to Rupert's point just a minute ago, it is incredibly expensive to create your own cyber range. It's actually really difficult to maintain it. It comes with a lot of cost, and the world isn't static. The world is moving all of the time. The technology landscape is moving all of the time. So to work with a partner like RangeForce, who are able to create a logical representation of your infrastructure in the cloud, as Rupert says, in hours, not weeks or months, in order to stand that up, is an incredibly powerful proposition. Add to that this notion that actually there is this enormous gap between demand and supply in terms of talent into the marketplace. And that means staff attrition rates are going to be high in the environment. And that means you need to get people up to speed really quickly. So when somebody comes into your environment, being able to test their skills, develop their skills through the self-paced learning, retest them, and then point them to areas where they need to develop will take you away from the traditional probably 6 months of onboarding for a SOC analyst into an environment before they can be truly let loose in the environment to down to 6 weeks or less potentially. So I think actually it's almost becoming a must that you've got to have access to this capability to get your resources up to speed as quickly as possible. So in my experience, having worked with Rupert and the team in RangeForce, this notion of testing in a really positive way, and then reaffirming those areas where your analysts need to develop, and giving them access to that training in a self-paced way allows for a very fast maturity in terms of your SOC analysts. So. I think more and more people are now talking about, the maturity of their SOCs. I think this becomes such a powerful tool in the arsenal.
Well, gentlemen, I appreciate both of you joining us today. It was a very enlightening discussion, and I hope we could have you back on with us again soon.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks very much, Steve. Thank you. Cheers.
I am Steve Morgan, founder of Cybersecurity Ventures and editor-in-chief at Cybercrime magazine. Joining us today was Simon Hodgkinson, former CISO of BP and a member of the advisory board at RangeForce, developers of the world's most comprehensive cybersecurity training and cyber skills assessment program. Also joining us was Rupert Collier from the RangeForce UK and EMEA organization. To learn more about RangeForce, visit rangeforce.com. You can keep up with all of our media at cybercrimemagazine.com.